advised that this recorded webinar has been edited from its original format, which may have included a product demo. To set up a live demo or to request more information, please complete the form to the right. Or if you are currently not on CSC Global, there is a link to the website in the description of this video. Thank you.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, 2020 Vision for Your Business Licensing Process. My name is Annie Triboletti and I will be your moderator. Joining us today is Brian Bartnicki. Brian is the Senior Business License Sales Engineer at the forefront, assisting customers with their industry-specific requirements, which range from research, portfolio management, and renewal services. Brian has worked with CSC for more than a decade, offering his expertise in the field of license compliance. And with that, let's welcome Brian.
Thank you, Annie. Today's agenda that I'd like to talk to all of you about is going to really cover a handful of topics. Who are we? That being CSC. We're going to talk about different types of business licenses. Then we're going to go into sort of the best practices or some of the common questions or concerns that really come up when I talk to customers. The importance of having a strong licensing process, and that relates to consequences that can occur if you are not having a good practice or process, I should say. And ultimately, we will end with how CSC can help in all these endeavors and a Q&A section. So I encourage all of you as we go through the webinar to jot down questions, think about what you want to ask at the end, and we will answer as many as we possibly can before we adjourn. So who are we at CSC? We've been around since 1899, which I find absolutely incredible. We've been around for literally 3 centuries and 2 millennium. And with that, we do many things. We service financial markets, law firm markets, legal markets, branding for corporate markets. We do represent over 65% of the top 100 brands in the world, over 90% of the Fortune 500. We have over 2,500 employees worldwide, and we are headquartered here in the corporate capital world, being Wilmington, Delaware. And so the big theme about all these wonderful things is that we truly are, business behind business. We are able to do multiple services and consolidate everything under one provider. And one item that I don't have up here, but I think is incredibly important, especially in this day and age to mention, is that we are proud to say that we are SOC 2 compliant. We are audited independently every year by a third party, and our security is world-class, similar to what you would get with a global bank. So that being said, I want to dive into the agenda and talk to what I mean by business licenses. Typically, when I talk to customers, I hear people say, I just formed my LLC, or I formed my corporation, and now I'm registering in other states. To you, that might be a business license. The reality is business licenses in my world and here at CSC's world are really going to be outside of the Secretary of State. Maybe we're talking about industry-specific licenses, maybe some variety of local types of licenses. And I have them here, just a few examples to go over today. Some of you may have occupational licenses, privilege tax licenses, maybe some local business tax receipts, or professional licenses. Maybe you're a CPA, or maybe you're in the trades, so you're contractors, architects, engineers. You might be in the insurance world. Again, these are just many different types of examples, but just know that the licensing is going to be geared to items that are specific either to the locality or your industry. And an amazing stat that I always like to let people know about, there are over 160,000 governing authorities across America that have unique business license requirements, whether we're talking about state boards for unique industry regulation, or all the way down in states such as Pennsylvania with villages, townships, boroughs, counties, cities, etc. So the reason I bring that up is I think it really relates to some of the key questions that come to everyone's mind when they are managing licenses. And I really want to break this down, or these questions, into 3 parts. The first being research. So let's say you're going to expand. Maybe you're going to physically open a brand new location, or maybe you're going to dive into a new market. Maybe you're manufacturing something and you're going to sell it all across the United States. Maybe you're going to acquire a company and you're not sure what in the world you're taking ownership of when it comes to all their location information, all the physical responsibilities of compliance that you're going to have to be undertaking. So one of the first questions is, where do you begin your search? How do you know what is relevant in relation to your business? Some of you on the line might be in the insurance world, and you might say, I just have no idea. If I hire somebody, how do I get them a license to sell property and casualty insurance? Some of you might be bidding on a job as an architecture firm, and you're not sure what you need to do business at the job. Again, these are just a few examples. But a big challenge is, you have multiple hats, and you just aren't sure where to begin. You don't know how to look up the laws, ordinances, regulations. What do you need to go through that identification licensing process? To that point, you could have specific industry licenses. So some of you, if you're in the hospitality restaurant business, you might have range hood permits. You might have outside cafe seating licenses. For those of you in the financial world, you might have collection licenses, passive debt buying licenses, lending licenses. Again, I've already spoken to a multitude of industries, but understanding and for everyone to be experts in all of these industries is a challenge, right? Again, we have multiple hats. And once you identify what's required, or you're going through that process to identify it, not only is it hard to find the time, but you have efficient ways of being effective through that research process. How are you reporting or tracking your results? How are you making your determinations? How do you summarize everything that you're finding? And so those are some of the challenges that I run into when I talk to customers who are trying to uncover, what's really relevant as it relates to licensing within their company. The next segment that I think is important when I talk to people about questions or challenges as it relates to licensing is just the sheer filing process. Once you've gone through the research, where does it go? We might think, we're used to Secretary of State offices. We could just send it to the Secretary of State of California, and bang, we know we're eventually going to get it back. We're dealing with some authorities that you just have to mail it in. They might not have online filing capabilities. Is it a P.O. box you send it to? We're dealing with multiple levels of very small jurisdictions to the very large. How do you check the status of applications? That sounds very simple, but I just to sort of set some foundation here, if you're talking about, again, Secretary of State offices, and you're trying to register your company to do business in New Jersey, you can just call the state of New Jersey and ask them where it is. Some states, like Delaware, for example, you can pay additional money to have them expedite it and look at it early. The challenge when you're dealing with all these different 160,000 jurisdictions, you're going to have situations where the office may only be open Monday through Thursday. They could be open from 10 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon, and they probably have a lunch break where they're not taking phone calls. And trying to understand the status of your license, especially when you're in a situation, maybe you're in RFPs and you're bidding on opportunities, or you want to open a location, you have a grand opening coming up, or you want to sell some type of product or policy, but you can't because you don't have the license in hand. And so all of that beyond this checking the status is how do we get these governing bodies, I should say, to move faster? The whole idea of paying additional money to have something expedited in the licensing world is not available. It's not going to be as simple as Secretary of State requirements. And so when it comes to the filing aspect, juggling that red tape follow-up along with those common challenges as it pertains to research are just some of the common themes that I hear about when I talk to customers. And if you're experiencing any of these, you're definitely not alone. Sort of the third level of challenges that I run into when I talk to customers are really down to the renewal, specifically as it pertains to, when is each governing authority going to require the renewal to be done? Now, again, to lay foundation, Secretary of State offices, generally they're set. They could be March 1st every year. They could be December 31st. Usually there's a set time when they're always due. When you're dealing with 160,000 governing authorities, they could change their regulations and due dates at any time. It's very, very difficult to manage when their ordinances change, when their regulations change. When are all of these requirements or licenses, when do they due? For those of you that have insurance licenses or individual professional licenses for firms or trades, you're probably experiencing situations where the license due date is based off of that individual's birthday. Some of you that have maybe some local city licenses, they may be based off of fiscal year end, or county licenses might have some consistent due dates. Some governing authorities have it just based on the anniversary month in which you filed the license. So the big challenge is really to not just to file them, but to constantly keep track and set expectations appropriately while you're doing all your other responsibilities throughout the given day. And to that point, beyond managing it, sometimes people track it on Excel. You might have to scan copies, have filing cabinets, have shared drives. Who has access to that information? Is it organized? Is it readily available? Again, there's so many different things going on in your day that understanding and managing this process is quite a challenge. So I think it's also important now that we've, talked about some of the challenges, and I think it's in best practice I think it's important to go into best practices as to why, if you don't have a best practice, I should say, what can happen? What are some of the consequences if you don't have a strong management process when it comes to handling these? And the first is simply that of basic fines and penalties. Now, I say basic in a relative way. Again, setting foundation. A lot of times we think that if we don't maybe file an annual report with a franchise tax report with the Secretary of State, we're just going to pay a late fee, and we're going to get it filed, and we're going to be back in compliance. The reality is when you're dealing, it's definitely different industry by industry. Some people in the insurance world, if you're selling policies without a license or you don't renew your license in your resident state, all your non-resident states are going to be revoked. And some jurisdictions, if you have physical locations, you may have situations where you actually may have to pay a penalty based on the gross revenue that you generated. And that's not even necessarily the time in which you weren't licensed. That could just be a penalty for the entire year for the revenue that you generated. It might be sometimes employees at locations. So those are just a couple examples. Understand that there's many, many variables you're dealing with. Again, 160,000 authorities that have their own way of deciding what penalties are and should be. Sort of another result or something else that could happen is that of lawsuits. You don't want lawsuits to occur, obviously, if maybe you're on a job, maybe you're in a trade, you're an engineering firm or maybe a contracting firm, you're on a job and your firm, for whatever reason, you fail to renew your license, it expires, and there's an issue with the product. You can have lawsuits, of course, on your hands, or you can have them be kicked off the job. That's another thing that can even occur. Now, beyond lawsuits, I did mention, it should come up on my screen here, business closure. I mentioned I kicked off a job. Believe it or not, it seems extreme, but there are many, many authorities out there that if you don't pay a license, even if it's as low as $25, it might be $500, it could be $1,000, could be more, but no amount is too little. Some jurisdictions, such as D.C., Chicago, and really those are the two big ones that come to mind in my world. You will notice, hopefully none of you experience this, but there are incognito inspectors that go around trying to see if you have a license that's posted and active. If you don't have it, you will actually get a court date in Chicago, pay fines, and after a week or two, you will be closed if you do not rectify it. Las Vegas is another one where if you don't pay certain jurisdictions in Las Vegas, the police department will come and close down the location. Granted, it's important that you don't want these things to happen, of course, but especially if it goes over into the weekend, you can lose weekend revenue as well. So, and even to go slightly more extreme, we do have arrests. Arrests are real in this world. I do have an example I always like to share to people, with people. It's not a real fun one, but there was a situation where a customer came to us in a situation where they wanted help rectifying a license simply because a former store manager had her driver's license on file with a local authority in North Carolina. She actually left the organization, but about 6 months later ended up getting a speeding ticket, and her former employer had never actually filed or renewed the license for their store. So there was a warrant out for her arrest because she was the person of responsibility to ultimately collect on the license. And so even though she wasn't employed and she got a speeding ticket, she ended up suing her former employer, and there were many other fees and legal costs that had to go into that. So that's kind of the ultimate trickle down. Again, that's a very extreme situation, but they do occur more frequently than you would think. For those of you that are constantly maybe in marketing or you have salespeople, you may have run into situations where you need to bid on jobs and you have a situation where you need a license yesterday and you're unable to do work or go into a new jurisdiction or go to market without having that license in place. So it's important to make sure you have all that correct and you're proactive. And I'll talk to you later on in the webinar how we can help you prevent that from happening. But some of the consequences that can occur is that you could lose sales opportunities within your organization based on what you're doing. Similar to that is just a delay in maybe introducing a new product. Maybe you're doing online sales and you want to ship your product from state to state, and you haven't gone through the appropriate process of delivering your product. Maybe you're using a third-party supplier, you're warehousing it somewhere to be delivered, and you don't have the appropriate licensing to be able to send it there or to actually be compliant. And ultimately, the last item I want to go over is your reputation, your brand. The last thing that you want is negative press. If you're a hotel, you don't want to be shut down because you failed to renew your bedding license for sanitation purposes. If you're buying used beds, you want to make sure that you have entertainment licenses. You want to make sure that if you're in hospitality in general, and this is just one example of many industries, of course, right, that you have all your permits filed. Everything is up to date and accurate. Again, your brand and the press, negative press can really hurt, especially when people are trying to make decisions, doing their own research for consumer purposes, and they see some negative feedback. Again, so that's all the bad stuff. And some of you hopefully have not experienced some of those. Maybe you have, and that's okay. I know you're not alone. But fear not, CSC can help in this process. From there, I do want to talk about our business license division here at CSC. I do want to highlight one of the things I mentioned on the onset of the webinar, and that is simply security, SOC 2 compliance. Why is that important? One of the items I have here, highlights regarding our team. We do not outsource to a third party. So when we are handling your licenses or helping you in any research or filings, which I'm about to dive into, your information is not being exposed to other parties out there in the market. Some of your licenses may have social security numbers, birthdays, driver's license images, insurance certificates, lots of intense information, background items, fingerprint cards. These are all things that are very serious. We understand the sensitivity of them. And to that point, the infrastructure is here at CSC. We have over 80 individuals that only do licensing compared to other providers. We're the only provider that does not outsource any of our work. Now, our actual services within the department, I want to really talk to in a couple areas. First is research. Some of the challenges I spoke about were simply regarding new locations, or maybe you're acquiring companies and you're going through an acquisition. Those are really the two that I want to mention. We have new location services and existing location services. The new location service is where you come to CSC and you say, I want to open a new location, or I'm going to go into a new market. I'm going to be performing services in this jurisdiction. Maybe I'm going to have somebody working from home, and I'm not sure if that requires some type of licensure. There's an industry-specific questionnaire you will complete, and our team will do that legwork and understand, based on the rules and the laws and the ordinances of all those governing bodies that relate to where you're going to be doing business. Does that apply to your business, and do you need those licensing requirements? We will then provide them to you, the applications, and it's a nice blueprint, so to speak, as to what you need. When it comes to acquiring businesses, or maybe you're just unsure about your existing portfolio, maybe you have your Excel spreadsheet and you just don't have confidence that everything you have is up to date, and you want to press the reset button and just start over, get that clean slate of comfort. Or again, I mentioned if you're acquiring somebody, you want to make sure that when you're doing your due diligence that you understand what you're taking ownership of. Are they in compliance? Is everything that you're going to be taking on in good shape? And so the existing location service is an industry-specific questionnaire that you complete, the exact same concept compared to the new location, but we will directly return to you a multitude of results. One is going to be simply what's required if you don't have it. So what's missing? What do you not have? But when we uncover what you do have, we will absolutely pull all the copies. We'll make sure everything's physically active. But we will also uncover what you may have over-licensed. Maybe you have filed something unnecessarily. So we can really help you mitigate costs. I say that in the sense that we find, and I personally find when I talk to customers in all markets and all industries, that many times they just file state level, county level, city level, everything, when maybe they don't need it. They might be a contractor and they have subcontractors, but they just file a contractor license because they're unsure and they don't want anything to happen. Some people that do passive debt buying might just get collection licenses. Again, these are some people in property management might just get licenses for a city for properties they're managing, but they're really not doing any maintenance or collecting rent at that location. So we really need to ask ourselves, are we over licensed? And the existing location research can absolutely fulfill that need. Once that research is done, we can help you file the licenses that need to be completed, and then we can help you track and manage them. I'm about to show you in a couple minutes here our business license portfolio, which I'll talk to, and gives you total centralization and visibility into your licenses. But the ultimate capstone service that we do have is simply the ability to take those licenses off your plate. You could simply hand it over to CSC. We will give you a dedicated contact who will track those licenses, let you know what we're filing on a monthly basis. We will advance all the fees. We will prepare them, file them, and update your portfolio accordingly, which I will talk to and show you in a couple seconds here. But just know that we can help you in all these endeavors to really, again, assist in some of those challenges or potential consequences that you may be experiencing. So I do want to, before I jump into the demo, just talk to the CSE Business License Portfolio Management System. Very briefly, it is web-based. It's accessible 24/7 as long as you have an internet connection. And again, it is secure. It is going to centralize all of your license information, ultimately preventing you from having these missed fines and penalties, and also letting you know or sending you sort of expiration reports and alerts as to what it is that we're doing. You could also have as many users as you would like. We don't charge for users. A user can be an administrator where they can make changes and view everything. Then we have the read-only user where they can just, of course, see what's in there but not make adjustments. And then we have something that is very valuable for a lot of customers. It's called limited access, where you can actually hide certain licenses from certain individuals. So some of you in the insurance world, you may have a lot of agents that are selling your policy or policies for multiple carriers, or maybe you are a carrier, they're selling that. But you just want them to log in and only see their own licenses. You don't want them to see other colleagues' licenses. We can make that happen. And training and support are absolutely included, and it's a turnkey situation. Either you send us your existing data, or we maybe do that existing location research and build the results and the data off of that.